Honor of introducing our speaker today. Dr. L. Carol Scott has 2 BA degrees, one in human development and one in anthropology, an MA in early education, and a PhD in developmental psychology. She is entering her final year of education to become a licensed religious science practitioner in the Center for Spiritual Living, a trauma-informed developmental psychologist, keynote speaker, 2018 TEDx speaker, and #1 international best-selling author. Carol has presented to CSL communities, Unitarian Universalist fellowships, and unity congregations across this country. Please help me welcome Carol Scott.
Dang, I sound good on paper, don't I? Good morning, everyone. I'm so very grateful to be here with you this morning. Get this up here by my lips where it belongs. Look at you all. Aren't you gorgeous? This is nice to turn around and see the whole room. So, I have a question for you this morning, simple question. If you could know everything you needed for happier, healthier, more fulfilling relationships that bring you more joy with less drama, how much would that be worth to you? And how much would you invest to learn it? Would you invest a day? How about a month? A year? How important is it really? You know, more than 40 years ago now, I think it's actually almost 40 years ago, Robert Fulghum wrote the book, All I Really Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. I see some people remember that book. All right, well, with great respect to the incredibly successful book and the incredibly successful author, Mr. Fulghum, he only got it 14% right. Sorry. That 1 year of kindergarten gave him exactly 1/7 of what he needed to know. And you may be surprised to learn that we begin gathering that wisdom of childhood on the day we're born, the moment we're born, actually a little bit before, I think. And our adult success begins with that wisdom of childhood in strategies for relationships that we learn when we're very small. And we continue that learning for 7 years, ending in kindergarten or first grade when we're about 7. All the theories and research on child development provide evidence that during the first 7 years of life, we gain all of the assets that we need for a lifetime of happy, fulfilling relationships. Thank you. Last thing we want is a fire. Now, I do know that the purpose of this talk is inspiration, spiritual motivation, affirmation, and not a lecture on child development. So here's your connection to your inspiration. How much closer to spirit would you live if you really, truly, nearly always, saw the inherent worth and dignity in every person? If you fully lived the first UU principle, wouldn't that mean that all of your relationships with family and friends and even coworkers, if you still have them, were full of trust, healthy interdependence, joyful play, mutual respect and satisfaction, and all graced by acceptance? Can you imagine? What would your life of faith be like if all your human relationships sparkled with, are you hearing these? Trust, healthy interdependence, joyful play, mutual respect and satisfaction, and all graced by acceptance of the truth of who we really are. And if they were, you could not help but also live the UU 7th principle of respect for the interdependent web of life, of all existence. So, when you struggle with these spiritual principles, it's because your ego is telling you lies about yourself and other people. And sadly, most of those lies were born during that window of your first 7 years of life. You see, when we were born, each of us was perfectly programmed to learn how to trust people and get along with them. And then life messed with your programming. In my first book, called Just Be Your SELF, Your Guide to Improving Any Relationship, I described what I called back then 7 childhood treasures that you were meant to mine in your early years to become a self-governed, ego-aware person who is leading in your life and free of self-imposed limitations and barriers. An SELF. Self-governed, ego-aware, leading, free. Now, these days, I call all of these gems, the 7 childhood treasures, I call them your 7 self-aware success strategies. Sounded a little more corporate, thought it might get me some more business. But really, it's because I understood them better after teaching them for many years. And it seemed like a really good idea to call them the self-aware success strategies until I had some oral surgery and I'm wearing this little plate in my mouth. And now it's all S's are a problem. But anyway, this is your SAS. You were born with the raw materials, the seeds of these assets for your success. And one of your significant jobs in your first 7 years of life is to reveal those hidden gems. You pull those seeds, those origins out, and reveal them in all of their complexity and beauty in your relationships with other people. Now, these sort of metaphoric gemstones represent 7 assets that you need to live with other people. To live knowing that first principle in your heart and always acting from that heartfelt knowledge that you and all the rest of us have inherent worth and dignity. These self-aware success strategies also give us every relationship tool we need to create a world that recognizes our divine unity and the interdependent web of existence. And finally, your SAS helps us create a world community that embodies the UU 6th principle, the goal of peace, liberty, and justice for all. In the Centers for Spiritual Living, we call this the certainty that life is intended to be without discord. Imagine a life without discord. Yeah? A life without discord. We are certain that the human condition is intended to be a life without discord of any kind. So, here's the problem. Most of us enter middle childhood in our 8th year of life without some or all of these 7 crucial assets for getting along with people. And very few of us are offered the development do-overs that we need in young adulthood, in our teens, as we grow up. So here we are, all grown up and still not able to trust each other. To be truly interdependent rather than, codependent. To relax and play fully, expressing the divine joy within our hearts. To get along in life's sandbox for grown-ups. And to accept one another as we are. To encourage each other's spiritual growth. Now, I don't know about you, but I believe in miracles. I was so glad to hear that gratitude for the miracle during the earlier part of the service. I believe in self-directed growth and evolution in partnership with the divine as the biggest miracle there is. And so, I believe passionately in what I call now development do-overs. You are not stuck with what you grew up with. Period. I said what I said. The raw materials of these 7 assets for interpersonal success are still there. Even if you didn't get to work with them when you were birthed to 7, it's never too late. all the stuff you need is still there, no matter how old you are. And you know, the mining tools that you have available to you now, the ability to work with those seeds is much more than when you were born, when you were young. Any one of you could have a greater connection to spirit and more fulfillment in your life as you begin or as you expand. How fully you now express your highest, best self through relationships. Because isn't it true that we express our spiritual principles mainly through relationships with other people? Right? In my belief system, I would say that if I, as a little human slice of, manifestation of spirit, express myself in the wilderness where nobody else can see or hear, I'm still God expressing in human form. But I also believe that I, as part of the interdependent web of life, which I call God, I believe it learns through us. So I am some of its eyes and ears and hands and feet in this world that we see around us. I am Spirit's sensory organs, if you will, bringing new information into the whole that is the web of life. So I believe that Spirit learns through us. And we can only do the kind of deeply transformative learning that evolves the Spirit within through people, through relationships with other people. Solitude, contemplating my navel, individual therapy, journaling, solitary prayer, they're all great. And they only got me so far. Then, for real spiritual growth, I needed, and you need, people. People, meh. This was my attitude most of my adult life, people. I don't know. But the wisdom of childhood is the solution. It's the source for those of us who are deeply spiritual when we're alone, but we still struggle to see the inherent worth and dignity in everyone we know. Now, imagine that world with me for just a moment. See with me a world that respects the worth and dignity of every child and elder, of every homeless man and hooker, every prisoner and police officer, every immigrant and indigenous one, every race, every religion, every friend, and every foe. See with me a world of peace, liberty, and justice for all of these, for each and every one of us, regardless of our appearance, our status, or our skill. See with me a world that sees the worth of every person. Let's let you see that for a minute. When I was working on this talk, at this point, I was reminded of a joke, so I'm going to tell it to you. It's about a kindergarten teacher who gave her class a show and tell assignment to bring something to represent their family's religious faith practice. So during the show and tell, the first child stood up and he said, "I'm Joshua, I'm Jewish, and this is a Star of David." And then the second child stood up and she said, "I'm Mary, and I'm a Catholic, and this is a crucifix." The third child, who was part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation, said, "Hi, I'm Willow, and I'm more spiritual than religious." And pointing at herself, she added, "And this is a free and responsible person on a search for truth and meaning." And that is the reason I like that joke, is because that is the essence of the wisdom of childhood. Knowing that there is this powerful and unique value in each of us. What childhood's wisdom also knows, which a lot of us grown-ups have forgotten, I think, is that it is up to each of us to bring that value forward powerfully in the world. Your two big jobs in life are: one, bring your value to us, and two, receive the gifts we bring. Big jobs. Simple-ish. So here's an amazing truth about that. The wisdom of childhood is designed to form us into beings who live in relationships that value each participant, their uniqueness, their gifts, the way they truly are. And that's really important. So I'm going to say it again another way. Relationships are not just supposed to be about getting along. They're about really seeing each other and making it safe to be seen as who you are. So, how does this magical innate programming for children's wisdom work, you may be wondering, or perhaps, why didn't it work so well in me? Well, of course, my first book gives you the full story, and I did bring some if anybody's interested afterwards. In 20 minutes, I can only say so much, but here's the gist of it. How many of you have heard the term individuation? Oh, smart people here. That's kind of a fancy $50 word from developmental psychology, but its meaning is very straightforward if you've not heard it before. You grow from a fertilized seed inside of a woman's body into a breathing, upright, walking, talking, thinking, dreaming social being who gets along independently in an extremely complex world. You transition from being a part of someone else to being an individual. You do this through individuation. You individuate. It's a human thing. As souls, we may all be united as divinity. As humans, we're individuals. And this, by the way, explains why parenting is so hard, if you don't mind a little side step, parenting and grandparenting both. Parents are the ones being individuated from. I know that's not grammatical, sorry, Mom. But do you get the picture? Kids are playing hot potato with adults' self-concepts, with their identities, and they reject their parents' hearts and souls like that toasted spud in the game of hot potato. Nope, not me. Starting even in infancy, over and over, children's behavior says, nah, that's you, that's not me. And remember, all the times when you asserted your identity as a child and a youth made you feel strong and proud, right? It's a pretty good feeling. But being the hands that deflect the hot potato is so much more fun than being the potato. So pity the poor potatoes, I mean parents in our community, because they have been peeled and mashed by their children's individuation. Or they have mashed individuation right out of their children. This is where our programming goes awry. That innate programming goes awry. And here's what nature's plan for successful self-awareness really looks like. But in the delicate sort of interactive dance of individuation, most grown-ups don't even know that they're dancing, let alone the right steps to not squash their baby's toes. We just don't know these things. Back when I was an infant, and maybe many of you as well, there was only one expert offering advice to parents, Dr. Benjamin Spock, and he had it like all wrong. All of it was totally wrong. Now there's like 400 million people offering advice, and most of them are wrong. Yeah. All right, so if you're clueless parents, we're like most clueless parents, then you probably lack a healthy capacity for trusting folks reasonably, and your closest relationships may have suffered for it or been lost to your lack of trust. You can't know the inherent worth and dignity of someone you don't trust at all, can you? Clueless parents also smash our independence, our autonomy, and we wind up codependent or overly dependent. Parents and teachers in their unaware dances with young preschoolers step on their dreams, so they never find an abiding sense of faith. They break their children's efforts at negotiation, so they never learn a healthy strategy for getting what they want and letting others do the same. And you know what? I also think that I can't respect the interdependent web of existence if I can't even find my own place in it. And so there they are, the first four of the self-aware success strategies: trust, independence, faith, and negotiation. 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. If you know kids this age, you understand these labels, I bet. These relationship assets are programmed for all of us to acquire by 4 years of age. 4. You don't even remember 4. Most of us don't. But given that your ability to trust, especially, was established in your first 6 months of life, would you consider a do-over? Would you consider looking at how that's going in your life? The first 4 self-aware success strategies, think of them as the basic structure in which your personality lives. So when you were a little kid and somebody asked you, when you were about 4 years old, 5 years old, somebody asked you to draw a house, what did you do? You drew a little square and you put a little triangle on top, right? And maybe you put in a door and a window and a tree and some grass and a sun or something. But that was the structure, right? Think of that structure now. The bottom square, trust and independence are the foundation. From birth to 2 years of age, trust and independence. And on that foundation, we raise walls up to faith and negotiation to make that square. Okay, so think of it in those terms. And then, once you have the bottom square, you need a roof. Keep out life's storms. You don't want it raining into your house, right? So the self-aware success strategies, the final 3, vision, compromise, and acceptance, at 5, 6, and 7, they make that little triangle on top. Vision, compromise, and acceptance. And at 5, think about this now, at 5, 6, and 7 years of age, you were programmed to lock in your capacities to set and achieve goals and engage other people in your enthusiasm for them. You were programmed to release your desire for 100% self-satisfaction in favor of serving a community of people who need things. And you learned to live with reality as it occurs. You were programmed to live with reality, accept what is happening as it occurs. Vision, compromise, and acceptance form that roof peak that gives you a whole home for your personality. Because you see, we can't even begin to open our hearts to respect for our own dignity and worth if we cannot trust other people to meet our needs. So, can you admit that you have emotional needs? You need stuff from other people that isn't stuff? Can you name them? Can you feel okay with being needy? Can you give up control and let somebody else be in charge? Yeah, that's all trust stuff. That's what trust is really about. It's not a binary on-off switch, I trust her, I don't. I trust her to meet my needs. I trust him to be present. I trust her to see me. I trust him to be safe. Trust is your birthright from 6 months of age. You should be able to do that now. And what about independence? Do you know who you are? What you want? How you feel? What your current emotional state is? Or are you more codependent? You kind of plan your behavior strategically to influence other people's actions and feelings? That sounds weird, huh? Who would do that? Well, here's a perhaps familiar example for you. Have you ever heard yourself say something like, "Oh, I couldn't tell her that, she'd get mad." Or, "Oh, I didn't want him to get upset, so I didn't do that." So I ask you, how many times a day do you create a workaround to keep someone else from having a feeling? That's the very essence of codependence, and completely unnecessary with the self-aware success strategy I call independence, your birthright from 2 years of age. Now, for the science nerds among us, I trust there are many of you. Thank you for being here. You churches are full of science nerds. This original process for finding and developing these self-aware success strategies is a series of opportunities that are pre-programmed, as I said, into our developmental milestones. Our whole developmental trajectory is designed to give this to us. Now think about children growing up. Over time, make it you're growing up, okay? So over time, your muscles got stronger, you got taller, you could control these muscles that allowed for speech much better, all the ones in your face and your tongue. You could manage these muscles better to pick things up and hold things to write and draw with. You learned how even to hold your torso and your head upright over a pelvis and a pair of moving legs. I mean, that's kind of a lot, right? So we grow up, we physically mature, we mature with other skills. And then we learn stuff. Through repetition of patterns that others teach us, we learn the names of things. This is yellow. Say yellow. Very good, you're so smart. This is a highlighter. Can you say yellow highlighter? What a bunch of smart boys and girls you are. I used to be a preschool teacher, can you tell? But people use repetition of teaching to teach us things like the names of things, also how to behave in certain situations, venues out in the world, and if we're lucky, how to self-regulate our emotional reactions. So, maturation, teaching and learning, both of them happen together and they reinforce each other. They wrap around each other all through your childhood. But there's a third strand of development that hardly anybody knows about or talks about outside of education, and that is called construction. And it makes those other two a really strong braid. We construct our own understanding of the world. We make stuff up all the time. Construction as a developmental process operates in both the social worlds and the physical worlds. Children use construction when they're learning science and math, but also in all of our interpersonal social relationships, construction is the main thing. We watch our grown-ups when we're little and see what they do, and we make up our understanding of what it is to be a woman, a man, a married person, what it is to be family. We watch other people and we create stories for ourselves about who other people are, who we are, and how to get along. Now, that's a crucial developmental process, and our maturation windows open up the windows for development of the construction, for the construction of unique realities about who we are and how we behave in the world. So as I said, the wisdom of childhood is still available for you today, and here we are back at your inspiration, your motivation, and your affirmation. I did sneak in the lecture on child development, I'm sorry. It is never too late to reconstruct your understanding of how relationships go. Never too late. Development do-overs are much easier now than when you were birthed to 7. You have many more tools to use, and you have a sophisticated tool, most of you in your palm, your pocket, or your purse, that will tell you anything you need to know. Siri, find UU church near me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's doing it. There you are. Oh, from Maine to Maryland, California, I got them all over the country. So you can have happier, more satisfying relationships, and that is your pathway to a healthier life of faith, to a more whole perception of a faith world. You can reopen all of the access to all of those self-aware success strategies. You can rebuild that little safe house if what you wound up with was a little shacky lean-to behind the garage. You can create for yourself a life that is different than the one you have. If it's making you unhappy, it's never too late to start. So will it matter if you start now at 70, 80, 50, 30, whatever you are? Will it matter? I think it will. And I can offer myself as one data point on the authenticity of the work, because I do this work. I have done this work for decades now. I grew up with an alcoholic, sociopathic pedophile as my father. So my first 7 years were defined by all kinds of abuse, and that created another couple of decades of pretty cray-cray, pretty big, crazy life. And when I was 30, I finally started to get undone from that. I finally started to do my development do-overs. And so I can testify the work works. And absolutely worth it. My development do-overs have been massive and continue to be massive. I still am doing the work right now. And I wouldn't give back a minute of it, because my miracle of co-created personal transformation in partnership with the divine continues, and every day my relationship with Spirit, as experienced through relationships with people, brings me more joy than I would ever have thought possible when I was back there in the people meh phase of my life. So I wish for you a life discovering childhood's wisdom and the self-awareness for every relationship of your life. I wish you all the sass, especially in your connection with Spirit. Namaste. I went long, sorry.